Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Jeez. Sorry. You snuck up on me today. I'm knee deep in scraps of paper and totally in a state of Monday disorganization. How you doing? Yeah. Let's just start easy. It's December 11, 2023. It's Monday. I guess I mentioned that before. Oh, there's the sigh. All right, I guess we're ready to start now. Jeez. Oh heck, let's start with an obituary. I can't. You know what? They're the happiest part of my day is reading the obits. And yeah, because it's about lives generally well lived, or if not, certainly they provide, what's the word? They provide a lesson. That's not the word I was looking for. You guys you're screaming it at me. I can hear it. Let's abort. Let's stop that sentence. Let's give it up. Here's the obit. I never heard of this person, and I read her obituary, and I thought, what? Because there's a lesson in this life, and it's about it's never too late. That's sort of the lesson. It's never too late. This is about a woman who literally began a very public major career when she was, supposed to be dead. I mean, she was old. She was really old. She was over 80 years old. And she said, I think I'd like to, and then bango, there's a career. Now, not a lot of people are able to do that, I suppose, because age often brings with it various obstacles, physical and mental. But physically and mentally, this 80-plus-year-old was going gangbusters. Her name is Colette Maze, M-A-Z-E. And she had always played the piano. I mean, for her, music, as she said, is spiritual food and as necessary as the more physical food that our bodies require. She felt music provides the spiritual food, as do other arts, that we also require. Now think of somebody who was born in Paris before the beginning of World War I. Yeah. I mean, in and of itself, that's amazing. And she so wanted to be a concert pianist. She was very good. But girls back then were not supposed to be concert pianists. And her parents absolutely disapproved of that and got in her way, refused to let her attend a conservatory. And so all her life, she was like told, no, no, no. So she did what people do. She adjusted. She got married. She became a piano teacher. When World War II came around and the Germans invaded Paris, she and a friend got on their bicycles and pedaled like mad to the south of France, where they pretty much hid out until the end of the war. So she taught piano. And what she really loved was Debussy. Debussy. Clair de Lune, okay? That guy, French composer. And her son said to her one day, Mom, you're so good. Why don't you see if you can record? I mean, put out a record. That was the beginning of what the New York Times obituary calls one of the most surprising second acts in classical music history. Because this woman, well into her 80s, put out an album that sold like hotcakes. And then she put out 6 more albums and created a huge fan base. And she became a celebrity. Her first album was released the year that she turned 90. Yeah. And critics praised her technique, her interpretation, yada, yada, yada. And I just got to say, I haven't heard her music, but how amazing is it that somebody starts something so big when she's nearing 90 years of age? And the amazing thing is she was able to continue until her death at 109 years old. She died at her home in Paris, in the same apartment where she had lived since she was 18 years old. So, never too late. It's never too late. And it's something, some people give up when they're like in their 20s. They do. They throw in the towel, essentially. I guess this is my life. That's what it's going to be. And it's insane. Just saying. So, sure where to go here. Actually, speaking of the sort of the power of, well, I don't know if it's the power of media or the power of government oversight, but I think both are at play here. I read a piece, I think it was Friday or Saturday, about how police officers are often trained and that this training is outsourced so that there are private companies. I did not know this, but it does make sense since we privatize so many things that in our heads, I think we think are governmental. But it turns out that there are a bunch, just tons private companies that train police in the United States. So if you're hired as a cop in some little town somewhere, it could be you'll be sent away to one of these places for much of your training. Even in larger cities, these training companies are brought in. And one of the fastest growing private police training companies was featured in this article. And I was just blown away by what this article said. Blown away. The company is called Street Cop Training. And they hold seminars, and, you know, police departments pay for their cops to come and take these courses. So they're getting tons of taxpayer dollars. And what happened is that the New Jersey auditor controller, I think he was called, started doing an investigation of one company in particular. And it's the one I've already talked about, Street Cop, because it is based in New Jersey. And it alone holds classes for law enforcement officers throughout the country, 45 states. And of course, as I pointed out, much of the money that comes into them is coming out of people's pockets, taxpayer dollars, because our taxes fund our police. And my God. So in doing the investigation, this guy and his, I'm sure his staff, went to some of these training sessions. Well, you can imagine where I'm going here. Unbelievable. The number of just outrageously discriminatory and harassing kinds of statements. What the guys who sat there and took notes said was, I mean, so much of what they were telling these trainees with guns and badges was unconstitutional. Listen to just this. I mean, this just blew me away. So part of the training was, how do you know what cars to stop in a traffic stop? And how do you spot suspicious behavior on the part of the occupants? Well, listen to what they were taught. Drivers who look away should be considered suspicious. Drivers who stare too long at officers also are cause for concern. Well, excuse me, but it seems to me if looking away gets you in trouble and looking at the cop gets you in trouble, well then what the hell are you supposed to do? Passengers wearing hats that partly hide their face were put on the checklist of reasonable suspicion factors. You got to be kidding me. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about hats right now. And a lot of hats, can partially hide one's face. So simply wearing a hat Also, get this. I mean, they also say that if, as the cop approaches the stopped motorist and the motorist removes their hat, that is a sign that should make the cop suspicious. Excuse me? So if you're wearing a hat, if you take your hat off, if you look away, or if you stare at them, you're screwed no matter what you do. And it goes on to say the checklist advises that it is suspicious if the car's occupants are too nicely dressed, if they are traveling a long distance, or it's suspicious if they are driving a minivan without a child seat in it, or if the car has a lived-in look with food wrappers and water bottles. Uh-oh. I mean, sometimes my car can look like a rolling garbage can, and I've been in many others that do. How is any of that something you want police to be taught? This is insane. And the people who are teaching it are cops or were cops. And they totally embrace this warrior approach. It said in the article that one of the teachers encouraged married female officers to flirt with their spouses because, quote, God knows there's some whores who will if you don't. Another instructor, a former detective with the NYPD, described his involvement in 13 incidents of deadly force in which he shot 8 people, killing 4. And in recounting this resume to the recruits, he said, so I'm batting 500. That's who's teaching the police at our expense. Public agencies in 46 states have provided direct payment to street cop training in the last 3 years. And these private, unregulated police training outfits are thriving in the United States. I wonder why there's problems. This is the training. This is the training. Um, 1,000 police officers from across the country attended just this one seminar that I'm telling you about. And the controller from New Jersey said, we found so many examples of instructors promoting views and tactics that were wildly inappropriate, offensive, discriminatory, harassing, and in some cases, illegal. So I read that like on Friday or Saturday. And then yesterday, there's another article I see. And it turns out that a judge in New Jersey yesterday threw out an entire case against somebody who was on trial for carrying a whole bunch of drugs in his car, threw it out because the detective who was behind it and whose testimony was germane, was one of the instructors at this outfit that teaches unconstitutional policing. And the judge said this officer's believability and credibility are so suspect that the government cannot back up a prosecution based on his testimony and behavior. So this guy's name is Brad Gilmore. He's one of the biggies in this company. And they're saying now that tons of cases are going to be tossed because of his involvement. And I would think that this will be the kind of thing that will not just happen because of him, but because of a lot of the other instructors as well. This guy's biography on the Street Cop website says that while working as a small town cop, Brad became extremely proficient at intercepting large amounts of contraband from criminal motor vehicle stops. Yeah. Probably stops where they wearing hats and looked away. So they're now saying that prosecutors who are relying on testimony from officers who teach at or who attended any of the street cop seminars could well end up being thrown out. God. I was going to say, so I was thinking initially that, wow, so it's not that this shows the power of media. This shows the power of a government regulating, a government seeing where tax dollars are going and checking it out. Okay, we got lots of money going to like this outfit. Let's check it out. And lo and behold, okay, I have a question. And it's not a question I came up with. It's a question that I saw posed on that app that drives me nuts, Nextdoor, where people bitch about people who don't, pick up their dog poop and other things, or who find everybody walking by their house suspicious, or who are constantly posting things like, well, I just heard a bunch of sirens at so-and-so. Does anybody know what's happening? And some woman, I forget what, had a complaint about, she went to the bank. Oh, I know. She went to the bank, PNC branch in Edgewood, and there was only one teller. That's it. There was nobody else around, one teller. And she said, I feel so sorry for this poor woman. She's there all by herself. And what got me was the comments. People started on her like, what? You go to a bank? You mean you walk into a bank? That's so old school. You don't have to deal with a teller. The reason there aren't any tellers is because nobody goes to banks anymore, except old people. Okay, so there was that. And I read some of it with amusement and bemusement, and then somebody asked this question. And it has been stuck in my head ever since. they said, yeah, I agree. Most people don't. I used to go to the bank. I rarely walk into a bank now. But why then does it seem they're building banks on every corner? Where a retail shop once, that was a bank. Where there was something else, now there's a bank. Why are there now banks all over? It's like streets of banks where there used to be streets of retail shops. Why are there banks? Brick and mortar banks. When nobody goes to them anymore. I'm just asking. I thought that was a hell of a good question. Because I have noticed the proliferation of banks. And, it's almost like a virus. It's like, another, oh my God, there's another. No, don't tell me there's a bank going in there. Yes, there's banks. But nobody goes to them. So if anybody's got, I'm throwing this out there because I think that is a hell of a good question. I remember reading somewhere that banks were downsizing and that they didn't need the huge buildings they had because, I guess, banks anymore. Not many people, I guess, even have like safe deposit boxes, so you don't need that. I don't know. But if that's true, I mean, if it isn't a bank, it's a drugstore, right? That's it. Okay, I'm throwing that out. And speaking of retail shops, there's this big to-do, I think, spurred by the Republicans and media, that somehow there was this just tsunami of shoplifting and retail theft going on in this country. Hordes, and we all saw the videos, right? People like, mobs breaking into places and just scarfing up everything and running out the doors. Well, it turns out, yes, that has happened once or twice. But it turns out that the actual group that was promoting this uptick in retail theft, which got so much attention, has now walked it back. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the National, what's the name of this? National Retail Federation has said, never mind. It appears that the data we had was faulty. And the reality is, guess what? Retail theft has been lower this year in most of the country than it was a few years ago. So in other words, the real story was there's a lessening of retail theft. The media got it totally wrong. Now, apparently it's up in New York City. That is not the United States of America. And again, I worry about the ability of media to properly, carefully inform us. But they are so driven by bad news, by scary news, because that's what sells. That's what collects eyeballs and ears. That is what they traffic in. Sober, serious reporting. Can't be sober and serious. This is an entertainment economy. And violence sells. Fear, anger, rage. That's what sells. Oh, guys. Okay. Now, I came upon something that so blew me away that it has not left my head. There's a new guy that my sister-in-law turned me on to one person who's on Substack. And then because I was on that, I saw other people. And so now you're getting a lot of this news. And thank God, because I have been feeling uninformed. I have been feeling like I'm just listening to the same people over and over again, and I need to branch out. And so I have. And one of the people, I've already shared some of his stuff with you. God, I love him. His name is Shalom Auslander. And I think he was raised in a very religious, Orthodox Jewish environment, and left. But he writes from such a point of view that I comprehend totally. Now, he sent something out the other day in which he said that this piece was to appear in the New York Times, but, he says, was inexplicably pulled at the last moment. Or, he says, maybe it was explicably pulled. I don't really know. So do me a favor and read it and share it. Now, I find the fact that it was pulled the most interesting thing of all. That the New York Times got cold feet about this piece he wrote. Because it's mind-blowing. Because it brings up, it's about Hanukkah. And so it was supposed to run this week, about Hanukkah. Now, I've been dutifully lighting my candles, even though when you're by yourself, it seems like, how so many holidays are about, family and you're being together. And if you're by yourself, it just feels empty. But I love the candles, and I love looking at them and watching them burn down. And watching more and more get lit every night. You light as each day you light one more until the last day the whole menorah is lit. And from the time I was a child, this was a holiday. And my mother, I was talking to her about this, and she said, well, your brother said to his teacher once, who asked him to describe your Jewish Christmas to the rest of the class. And he said, well, it's not a Christmas. It's a holiday that comes around Christmas time. And it actually, what cracked her up is that he said it's actually a very minor holiday, which is true. And it was never much of a holiday. Very few people paid much attention to it until we got here in the United States of America. And Christmas was such a big to-do. And all the little Jewish kids didn't get any presents at Christmas. And their friends were always, believe me, in my memory, that's my friends would call up and say, "Oh, you've got to see what I got. I got them." And so Christmas was like this time when, as a little Jewish kid living in this very Christian world, I would feel left out, bereft, and giftless. So Jewish parents began to build up Hanukkah and started and we'll give a gift every once in a while during this 8-day thing. And so little Jewish kids could now have their wintertime gift-giving thingamajig. And what I was taught, here's what was in my head. You know how everything you're taught gets boiled down into some simplistic story? What I was taught, what I remembered, is that it was a holiday celebrating this amazing miracle where the plucky, amazing guerrilla fighters, the Maccabees, tried to restore the temple that had been desecrated by, now I forget which horrible people they were. Babylonians? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Whoever was killing Jews at the time. And they wanted to light the eternal flame that has to be lit. But there was only enough oil for it to last. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, the miracle is that it lasted for 8 days. Blah 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 blah. But so this is my memory. Oh, the Maccabees, the heroes, the lights, the miracle, the da 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 da. And now let me share some of what Shalom Auslander tells us. Because it turns out that, like so many of the stories that we tell ourselves and the holidays we celebrate are so suffused in myth and not in history and in whatever was necessary, Anyway, here it is. Shalom Auslander. This is the piece that the New York Times had said to him. Yes. Oh, he'd love to print it. And then all of a sudden somebody got scared and said, no. He writes, given the state of the world, I could use a good holiday. Something happy, something festive, something with candles and presents and jelly donuts. Now, I don't get the jelly donuts part, but apparently that's part of his Hanukkah thing. Something like Hanukkah, which celebrates the victory of the ragtag Maccabees over the Seleucid Empire. Who they? In 175 BCE. Unfortunately, the celebration of Hanukkah is a celebration of zealotry, which was news to me. And frankly, given the state of the world, I've about had it with zealots. You see, 175 BCE was a very zealoty time. Zealotry was all the rage. The Maccabees were a group of Jewish religious zealots who decided that the rest of the Jews weren't religious enough. To me. No, not quite. They were upset that a lot of Jews were trying to assimilate and were leaving, not doing everything Jewishly. And I didn't remember that. So anyway, he says they raided the Jewish temple. The Maccabees took over the priesthood and forced everyone to follow their rules. And then he quotes the book of Maccabees. Quote, so they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath. Then Mattathias, he was the head. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. Auslander says that's just chapter 2 of the book of Maccabees, folks. There's 29 more. The Maccabees weren't the only zealots, of course, he says. Antiochus, or Antiochus IV, the leader of the Seleucid Empire, was a zealot for Zeus. So he raided the Jewish temple, murdered the priests, sacrificed pigs to Zeus, and forbade them from getting circumcised. The Maccabees fought back, retook the temple, forced the Jews to get circumcised. The whole thing is very penisy. Keep reading and you'll find that the zealous Maccabees gave rise to the zealous Hasmoneans, who forcibly converted people to Judaism, penises again, and whose reign eventually ended in a bloody civil war. Sadly, we live in a zealotry time ourselves. Zealots like Hamas who swear to kill all Jews. Hey, don't get too comfy, Christians. They'll come for you too. Zealots like Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who declares there are no innocent Palestinians. Zealots like Bezalel Smotrich, who calls himself a proud homophobe. Zealots like Ayatollah Khamenei, who really, really, really hates women's hair. And so, as much as I could use a good holiday, I struggle to celebrate one that celebrates zealotry. It sickens to imagine that maybe 1,000 years from now, a holiday celebrating the great Netanyahu, who did slay the Palestinians, and also, while he was at it, democracy, or the children in some dark future lighting candles to honor the noble Iranian mullahs who beat women to death for letting their hair blow in the wind, or the glorious Hamas forefathers who did rape women and murder babies. I shudder to imagine what that celebration might look like. This might anger some, I know. But the Torah sages agree with me. The books of Maccabee were never included in the Jewish Bible, the Torah, in part because the sages disapproved of the behavior celebrated within them. As Vered Noam, a professor of Talmud at Tel Aviv University, points out, even references to Judah Maccabee by name were removed to avoid hero worship of the Hasmoneans that followed him. You know who did admire the Maccabees? The Crusaders. Come, O Christ, wrote Gilo of Paris. Grant now the divine gifts often granted to your Maccabees, that one may trounce thousands upon thousands. So enough with the trouncing. Enough with the zealots. Where is the holiday that praises the rational, the moderate, the reasonable, the sane? When is not Lunatic Day? When is playing with a full deck day? Let's at last have a holiday that honors balance, that praises judiciousness, that celebrates genuine wisdom. Blessed are you, we will sing after lighting the candles, who doth find consensus, who bloweth up not everyone, who forceth not his ways upon others. Praise unto you, all reasonable. May your equanimity endure forever. And then, donuts. Shalom Auslander. I love him. I love this guy. The New York Times did not print that. Why? It would upset Jews. It would upset... because the truth upsets people who have to cling to myths. I'm still lighting my candles. I read that and then I thought, I light the candles because it means something else to me. Unbelievable. Okay, well, the thing I've been avoiding is the college presidents and the anti-Semitism thing. And there's no avoiding it; it's everywhere. And I really, so much has been written that I think is right on. This inability of these college presidents from Harvard, MIT, and Penn to flat out say that calling for genocide of the Jews was violated the rules of their campuses. As Maureen Dowd said today, not since Bill Clinton was asked about having sex with Monica Lewinsky and said it depends on what the meaning of the word is has there been such parsing. Because the presidents were saying things like, well, it's the context. Was it speech or was it action? Were they whatever, ever? But the thing here is the hypocrisy, the double standard. And in some respects, I'm grateful to these three brilliant women. Interesting that they were all women. For so clearly exhibiting the hypocrisy and double standards of the academy. This is a place where Harvard has cautioned its undergraduates that, this is a quote, cis heterosexism and fat phobia perpetuate violence. And using the wrong pronouns qualifies as abuse. This is the same crowd that demands safe places and trigger warnings if you're about to say a word or read a book or whatever. But somehow, here's Jonathan Greenblatt. The truth is that these presidents are not committed to free speech. They're committed to favored speech. They selectively enforce the codes of conduct when it works for them or their friends in the faculty lounge. And there it is. So, as I have pointed out, the culture, what our kids are learning on college campuses, is this bizarre Manichaean, black and white, simplistic view of understanding the world, that there are oppressed people and there are oppressors. So Israel is now a Goliath. It used to be a David, but it's now a Goliath. And even though it's surrounded by enemies that want it destroyed. The Jews were long ago stricken from the roles of the oppressed. Interesting, since the Holocaust, the stench of that is still in my nose. The Jews do not qualify as an oppressed people because, ladies and gentlemen, they're white. Some of them. They're not really, but they are perceived as white. And since that whole racial shit is shit, and Jews are seen as privileged, and some are. I am. Not all of them. So we now, and what kids are taught, is a culture which loves victims, worships victimization, and gives great moral authority to victims. But we do not treat all victims equally. So Maureen Dowd said this. I think this is still America, but I don't understand why I have to keep making the case on matters that should be self-evident. And why should I have to make the case that a man who tried to overthrow the government should not be president again? Why should I have to make the case that we can't abandon Ukraine to the evil of Vladimir Putin? Why should I have to make the case that a young woman whose life and future ability to bear children are at risk should not be getting persecuted about an abortion by a shady Texas attorney general? Why should I have to make the case that anti-Semitism is abhorrent? So I talked long ago about anti-Semitism on the left, and man, did I get pilloried. I've had even letters delivered to my home, by the way, which with no return address. I guess just letting me know we know where you live. And they're from lefties harassing me, saying things that, I don't care about the children of Gaza, which is not true. Putting words in my mouth. And reviling me in no uncertain terms. But I don't get, the geniuses at the universities have got to figure a way out of this twisted pickle they've gotten themselves into, where somebody can get hounded out of the university for believing that in old-fashioned sex categories, or you name it, or racist ideas. But in what world, somebody said, is a call for violence against Jews protected speech? But a belief that sex is biological isn't. Because that's the kind of twisted crapola that the universities have gotten themselves into. And it's taken them a while. I have, again, I'm bringing up my brother because he has lived his adult life in the academy. That's when I first heard it called that, the academy. Which I think is such crap. And in the academy, I saw him as he, in his time as a professor of law at the University of Michigan, I saw him grow increasingly sickened by this lefty crapola. By the way, the first time I encountered leftist harassment was going to his son's bar mitzvah. This would have been, since that son is now like almost 40. No, he's not. He's 33. But when I went to his bar mitzvah, which would have been 20 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, as I walked toward the synagogue, I was stunned to see picketers pretty much surrounding it, and they had signs that decried Israel and as killers and all that kind of stuff. And as we walked in, and my brother had warned me that they were there every Saturday. He said, and we're all to not engage them. That's what the synagogue leadership wants. Just walk by them. And I was like, what the fuck? I am here to celebrate my nephew's bar mitzvah. And there's these screaming lefties accusing me of being a killer. That's anti-Semitism, guys. I haven't killed anybody. That was 20 years ago. My brother watched this in all its forms. He watched as the very woke public school system that his children went to, ban one piece of playground equipment after another because, somebody could get hurt. Who banned playing games because you can't leave some kids out. Who watched all this stuff happen, and he was just disgusted by it. And for a while, he became like this raging conservative. He did. That was his reaction. And believe me, after I think it was Sarah Palin that did him in, and back he came, but never back into the embrace of the left. And I have had less. I understood his reaction, and I'm having the same reaction now, although I'll never become a conservative. But I want to make clear, there is a distinction I make between the left and liberals. And most people don't. They think left, progressives, and liberals are all the same. In my head, they are not. And words are important to me. When all of a sudden I was told I was no longer a liberal, when was this? When the word came down, that we were now to be called progressives. And you'll recall I was vocal about it. I said, I don't want to be. I like liberal. That's what I am. That's what my dad was. I'm a liberal. But the progressives ran away from the word liberal because the right had demonized it. They didn't stand and fight. They ran and got a new word, progressive. Well, I don't find that progressive. So I've never said I'm a progressive. And the left? Well, the left is, I have sometimes had made common cause with, and definitely other times not. And I always felt that the craziness of the academic left had helped elect Donald Trump, on a daily basis gave fodder to the Republicans to ridicule Democrats, most of whom are not leftists at all. I'm just saying. I'm going to leave you with something wonderful I read. It's about the weather and the time of year. It's, I can't even, half of it's torn off here. Fall has given way to winter now, a season I once dreaded for its cold silence and its darkness. But I am grateful for this stillness and this quiet. I am so grateful for the birds. Though fewer in winter than in the other seasons, I can see them better now, unhidden in the cold boughs, unmuted in the cold air. Their echoing songs spill down from the bare branches. Darkness falls early now, but I don't fight it. I sit with my book and my dog, and I treasure the quiet. The earth is resting, and I am in need of rest too. In winter, I feel at home in the silences world. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.